This presentation will cover the basic components of the interview process. In the following slides, we will cover the 3 steps to the interview process, the various types of interviews, the types of interview questions you might encounter, possible questions you should ask of an employer, and follow up after the interview. We will begin by going over the 3 steps to the interview process. There are 3 main steps to the interview process: preparation before the interview itself, and follow-up after the interview. We will go over each of these in detail. Preparation. Before you arrive at your scheduled interview, you must first do a little homework. First, you should know yourself and your reasons for wanting the job. One of the first questions an employer will ask is, "Tell me about yourself." Another question you may encounter will be, "Why do you want this job?" Knowing what an employer expects to hear and answering appropriately will be invaluable to you in making a good impression. Next, you should know the organization. Visit the company's webpage and familiarize yourself with their mission statement, history, products, services, etc. Try to find something of interest to you that you can speak about in the interview. Remember to practice. Practice responses to possible questions they may ask. You might be able to find information on this by visiting websites such as Glassdoor.com, where candidates sometimes post the types of interview questions they received during their experience. You might also visit your Career Services Center for assistance with this, or if you know of someone who currently works for the organization, ask them what you might expect to be asked. Then, practice your responses so that you are not caught off guard when the question, "What do you know about our company?" or "What was it about our mission statement that stood out to you?" is asked. Practice questions that you will ask of the employer. The biggest error many candidates make is in not having questions for the interviewer. Having questions for the interviewer shows an interest in the organization and in the position for which you have applied. Practice interviewing. You can do this through scheduling a mock interview with someone in your Career Services Center or through utilization of an online service such as InterviewStream. Be sure to dress appropriately for the interview. It is always better to be dressed professionally for your first encounter with an interviewer, even if the company culture is relaxed. Remember, you can only make a first impression once. Finally, arrive early to the interview, but not too early. Typically, arriving 15 minutes prior to your interview will give you enough time to compose yourself and become familiar with your surroundings. It will also allow you to calm yourself, especially if you've had to walk a distance from your vehicle to the interview. You want to avoid being out of breath when you go into the interview. Now that you've prepared yourself for the interview, it is time to put your knowledge to work. Some points to remember are: don't smoke or chew gum. The smell of smoke lingers on clothing and hair. Chewing gum during an interview is not only distracting, but unprofessional and inappropriate. Remember, you only make a first impression once. Remain standing until the interviewer invites you to sit or until after he or she has been seated. Be aware of your posture at all times. Refrain from slumping in your chair or appearing too relaxed. If you are a male, be sure both feet are on the floor. Ensure shoes are polished and appropriate. No excessively high heels, sneakers, sandals, or open-toed shoes. Maintain good eye contact with the interviewer, but don't stare. It is fine to avert your gaze occasionally when answering a question. However, you should not look away from the interviewer while a question is being asked. Turn your cell phone off. Even a phone that is on vibrate can be distracting and shows a lack of respect. Refrain from wearing cologne or perfume of any kind. You never know whether an interviewer is allergic to the particular scent you may be wearing. Do not wear excessive jewelry or jewelry that might jingle when you are gesturing. It is important to understand the various types of interviews you may encounter. In the following slides, we will cover 7 basic types of interview. A structured interview typically consists of a set of predetermined questions that are asked of every candidate. The interviewer may read from a list and make notes as you are responding. This type of interview is designed to eliminate bias by giving all candidates the opportunity to answer only those questions on the list. A non-structured interview does not follow any set protocol. Rather, the interviewer might treat the session as though it were a conversation. You might even find that you are discussing things that have little to do with the job for which you are interviewing, such as favorite sports teams or your thoughts on current events of the moment. This type of interview is designed to put you at ease in an effort to find out if you are a good fit for the company's culture, as well as to determine if your opinions are in accordance with the company's mission. A stress interview is designed to determine how well you handle pressure. The interviewer may use various tactics in an attempt to make you nervous, such as responding to your answer with a questioning stare, or by making a statement such as, "You really believe that?" Remember, the interviewer is not necessarily trying to get you to change your response, but rather to see if you are able to stand by your response in a respectful and calm manner. In a behavioral interview, the questions usually begin with, "Tell me about a time when," or "Discuss a situation where." The interviewer is attempting to determine your problem-solving process in certain situations. Panel interviews consist of several interviewers asking questions of one candidate. When responding to questions from a panel, it is a good idea to direct your response to the person who asked the question while glancing briefly at the remaining panel members during the process. Group interviews consist of one or more interviewers asking questions of a group of candidates who compete to answer questions. This type of interview can be difficult, since you must find the balance between being assertive enough to show that you are eager, but not overly assertive. Similarly, finding the balance between being considerate enough to allow others to have their chance to speak while not being dominated by other personalities can be challenging as well. Telephone interviews contain their own set of challenges. The interviewer does not have the ability to see facial expressions or hand gestures. All they have to form an opinion is the sound of your voice. Be careful of using like, you know, since these will be extremely more noticeable during a phone conversation. A good way to overcome this habit is to practice phone interviewing with someone who will be able to point out your usage of these words. Also remember to sound enthusiastic during the conversation. Speaking too slowly or too quickly, or in a monotone voice can make a poor impression on your interviewer. However, telephone interviews also have positive aspects. You can have your notes in front of you to help guide you during the interview. Also, some people do better when they are in familiar surroundings. Just be sure that the employer does not hear you rustling papers, typing on your keyboard, or that there is excessive background noise during the call, such as a television. Skype or computer interviews are usually done when direct travel to a company is not possible for various reasons. The challenges you might face with these types of interviews include lost connections, delay in response time, background noise being more prominent, and making the mistake of looking at the computer screen when answering a question instead of the camera lens. Be aware of background noises such as a ticking clock, barking dog, or traffic. Additionally, be sure the wall behind you does not have anything distracting on it, such as a poster or wall hanging that can give a poor impression. Prior to your interview, you should also agree upon a backup plan with your interviewer such as a phone number they can call should your connection be lost. Now that we know the various types of interviews you may encounter, we will cover the types of questions you may be asked during those interviews. We will cover 3 basic types of interview questions in the following slides: traditional, situational, and case. Before we go into these questions, however, we will discuss the importance of perfecting your elevator pitch. Regardless of what type of interview questions you are asked, one of the first questions that most employers will ask is, "Tell me about yourself." I mentioned this earlier in the presentation when discussing preparing for the interview. When an interviewer asks you this question, they do not want to know where you were born, what your childhood was like, what your favorite color is, etc. The interviewer wants to know more about your academic and professional background so he or she can begin to form a picture of how well you will fit with their organization. Coming up with a 30-second elevator pitch and committing it to memory will be invaluable when asked this question. It will also be very helpful to you when networking for opportunities in the future. Basically, you should be able to give an overview of yourself in the amount of time it would take for an elevator to go from one floor to the next, hence the name elevator pitch. You should include your name, anticipated graduation date, the degree you are pursuing, the type of work you seek, and why you are interested in that company. Here is an example. My name is Jane Smith. I'm currently a junior at Penn State pursuing my Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration. I'm seeking an internship opportunity in the field of finance, and your organization stood out to me because you are highly regarded as experts in this area. Traditional interview questions assist interviewers engaging you as a person. It helps them define your level of motivation, background and strengths, and your overall personality. Additionally, questions such as, "Tell me your strengths and weaknesses," help an interviewer understand your ability to speak about your attributes confidently, as well as to know your areas for improvement and what you are doing to address them. Situational interview questions are designed to see how you handled previous situations and what traits or behaviors you utilized. They also require you to speak about actual circumstances in your experience rather than hypothetical situations. This helps an interviewer understand your thought process and how you went about solving the particular problem. They may ask you follow-up questions to determine if your approach is consistent. The reason for this is that some candidates attempt to answer questions based upon what they think the employer wants to hear, which can lead to inconsistencies in responses when follow-up questions are asked. Next, we will discuss the STAR method, which can be very helpful in answering situational-based questions. How to answer a situational question? Be a star. When asked a question such as, "Tell me about a time when you were running late for class and how you handled it," utilizing the STAR method, you would describe the situation, identify the tasks that had to be completed, explain the action you took, and what the result of the action was. So, for example, using the question that I had just mentioned, "Tell me about a time when you were running late for class and how you handled it," using the STAR method, it might sound something like this. Last year, during spring semester, when we were having a stretch of cold weather, I went out to start my car and found the battery was dead. I knew I needed to get the battery up and running as soon as possible, but I wasn't sure how to use the jumper cables. I asked my dad to help me, and he showed me how to use the jumper cables for the battery. I arrived to class 20 minutes late, but remained afterward to explain to my professor what had happened, and I assured him that I would get the missed notes from my classmates. My professor completely understood and worked with me to help me get back up to speed. Case interview questions involve hypothetical situations that are sometimes based on actual occurrences, in which you are asked to analyze the situation, propose solutions, and explain the reasoning behind your conclusion. They help the interviewer determine your ability to weed out extraneous information from important information, as well as gauge the methodology you use in problem solving. At the conclusion of the formal interview, you will be asked if you have any questions. You should always have at least 3 questions to ask. Some questions you might ask are listed on this slide. As a general rule, you should stay away from any questions dealing with how much money you will be paid, what time off you will receive, and what benefits you will get. These will be discussed at a later time, typically when an employer has decided to make an offer. Be sure to ask the interviewer for a business card before you leave. This will be necessary when you perform your follow-up after the interview, which we will discuss next. Once the interview itself is complete, it is your responsibility to follow up with the interviewer to express your gratitude for having been given the opportunity and to re-emphasize the characteristics you bring to the table. Within 1 day, send a thank you letter. This may take the form of an email, handwritten note, or hard copy letter sent via U.S. mail. Any of these methods are acceptable and a matter of preference. Sometimes, however, you can determine what an interviewer might prefer by taking notice of your surroundings during the interview. Do you see a lot of photographs on the interviewer's desk? Are there cards pinned to the bulletin board? Chances are this person would appreciate a handwritten note. Does the desk seem extremely organized and contain only a phone, computer, and calculator? Perhaps an email might be the way to go. Do you notice a lot of paper strewn about on the desk? And did the interviewer hold your resume in his or her hand during the interview while writing notes in the margins? A hard copy letter might be the preferred method of correspondence. Again, any letter is better than none, but if you can go the extra mile in determining which type they prefer, it can give you a competitive edge in getting invited back. If you were interviewed by a panel, you should send 1 letter to the person who initiated the interview, asking him or her to extend your thanks to the remainder of the panel. This concludes the presentation on interviewing. If you should need any assistance or have any further questions about the interview process, please remember to contact your Career Services office.